What if the most powerful moment in Sister Wives history wasn't a breakup, but a walk down the aisle that changed everything? Today, we're uncovering the emotional twist that could redefine the entire Brown family legacy. So if you love real talk with heart, hit subscribe and join our Coco Gossip family because we're just getting started. Welcome back to Coco Gossip, where the surface story is never the whole story. And today, we are stepping into a moment that could quietly become the most defining shift in Sister Wives history. Because what is unfolding around Janelle Brown's wedding is not just another chapter, it feels like the closing of a very long book and the opening of something no one predicted. Now, before anyone assumes this is just about flowers, dresses, and guest lists, let me ask you something. What happens when a woman who spent decades inside a structure built on hierarchy and shared authority decides to walk into her future on her own terms? And what happens when the person standing beside her during that walk is not the man who once called himself the patriarch, but the son who viewers watched grow up far too fast? Because according to growing insider chatter, the most powerful moment from the private rehearsal was not about romance at all. It was about symbolism. Sources close to the preparations describe a scene that left even seasoned production staff silent. The music begins softly, the doors open slowly, and there stands Janelle, radiant, calm, grounded. But she is not alone, and she is not being escorted by a distant uncle or ceremonial placeholder. Instead, standing at her side, steady and composed, is her eldest son, Logan. And what makes the image even more striking is that he is not isolated. Behind him and slightly flanking him are his brothers, forming what online fans have dramatically nicknamed a Viking formation, a phrase that may sound theatrical but carries emotional weight. Because longtime viewers remember the early years, remember the crowded Lehi kitchen, remember the chaotic mornings when breakfast had to be made, lunches packed, younger siblings organized. And while Kody Brown moved between households, balancing the demands of plural marriage, Logan often appeared as the quiet stabilizer, the teenager who stepped into responsibility long before most teenagers even think about adulthood. And that is where this moment begins to feel less like rebellion and more like recognition. Recognition of sacrifice, recognition of partnership, recognition of years that cameras captured but perhaps never fully acknowledged. Because if Logan walks Janelle down the aisle, it does not erase history, it reframes it. It asks viewers to reconsider who actually carried the emotional infrastructure of that household during its most fragile years. And that question alone builds suspense, because symbolism in weddings is powerful, and when traditions shift, the meaning shifts with them. Insiders suggest that even the ceremonial language may have been adjusted, perhaps moving away from the singular "I do" toward a collective "we do." Subtle but significant, implying not transfer of ownership, but united support. And if that is accurate, it quietly dismantles the old hierarchy without attacking it directly. And here is where the tension grows, because reports indicate that when word of the rehearsal arrangement reached Kody, his reaction was strong, allegedly describing the scenario as disrespectful and suggesting it felt like someone trying to take his place. And whether that statement was exactly phrased that way or shaped by rumor, it reveals the emotional core of this unfolding story. Because from one perspective, a son honoring his mother is beautiful. From another perspective, it can feel like displacement, and that contrast fuels the entire narrative. Yet, what makes this moment resonate with audiences is not rivalry, but evolution. Viewers have spent seasons watching relationships strain under expectation, watching conversations about loyalty and authority unfold in living rooms across multiple states. And now they are witnessing a woman step into independence, surrounded by children who support her, and a partner described by insiders as steady, calm, and respectful, especially toward those same children. And that description alone invites comparison, not through criticism, but through contrast. Because where past seasons often showed tension over hierarchy, this new chapter appears rooted in partnership and collaboration. And that is what makes it suspenseful, because change is unsettling, even when it is positive. As we move deeper into the developing story, speculation expands beyond the aisle to the reception, where whispers suggest Hunter may deliver a speech focused not on grievances, but on gratitude, resilience, and the qualities that make someone a consistent presence in a family. And if that speech unfolds as rumored, it could become one of the most talked about moments in franchise history, not because of confrontation, but because of what remains unspoken, highlighting attributes like stability, patience, and unwavering support. Inevitably sparks reflection, yet without direct attack. And that approach demonstrates growth, maturity, and emotional intelligence. And here is the larger question lingering in the background. What does this wedding mean for the broader Sister Wives narrative? Because if cameras captured these moments, producers now hold footage that symbolizes a turning point. The series began centered around a man leading 4 wives, navigating plural marriage challenges, but the tone has gradually shifted toward individual journeys, self-discovery, and life after separation. And this ceremony could crystallize that shift, marking the transition from patriarch-focused storytelling to stories of autonomy and healing. And that possibility carries enormous narrative weight because audiences crave authenticity, and redemption arcs resonate deeply, especially when they unfold over nearly 2 decades. And within that arc, financial independence also emerges as a subtle theme. Chatter indicates that Janelle managed planning with support from her children, rather than relying on former marital resources, reinforcing a message of self-sufficiency and collective family backing. And again, the emphasis remains on reconstruction rather than conflict, a family reorganizing itself around adult respect instead of inherited authority. And the more this picture forms, the clearer the emotional center becomes. This is not about humiliation. It is about closure, not about replacement, but about acknowledgement. And still, suspense lingers because reactions ripple beyond the ceremony. Insiders hint at conversations about spiritual authority, about whether ceremonial roles hold theological significance even after divorce. And while such discussions are complex, what stands out most is the visible shift from hierarchy towards shared decision-making. And silence from certain parties becomes significant because silence can communicate boundaries more powerfully than debate. And as anticipation builds, viewers are left with a single striking image: a mother walking forward, hand in hand with a son who once helped hold her world together, stepping toward a partner described as supportive rather than commanding. And in that image lies the emotional resolution many fans have long hoped to see. Because sometimes the most dramatic transformation does not come through raised voices, but through composed, confident steps toward a future chosen freely. And as this chapter continues to unfold, one truth becomes undeniable: the Brown family story is evolving. And whether interpreted as reinvention, healing, or simply progression, this wedding stands poised to become the visual symbol of that evolution, leaving audiences watching closely, knowing that the quietest gestures often carry the loudest meaning. As anticipation surrounding the ceremony intensifies, the focus inevitably shifts from the symbolic walk down the aisle to the deeper emotional and structural consequences that ripple outward from it. Because weddings in long-running reality narratives are never isolated celebrations. They are turning points that expose fractures, redefine alliances, and reveal who truly stands where when the music fades. And according to ongoing speculation, the aftermath of Janelle Brown's wedding may carry even greater weight than the ceremony itself. Since this event does not simply unite 2 people, it potentially reorders an entire family dynamic that audiences have watched evolve for years. Insiders suggest that conversations behind closed doors have centered on themes of relevance, authority, and narrative control. Because when a former patriarch witnesses the visible affirmation of a family system that no longer revolves around him, the emotional impact can be profound. And while public reactions remain measured, the online discourse has been anything but quiet, with fans debating whether Logan escorting his mother represents generational transition, natural progression, or an intentional redefinition of legacy. And that debate underscores the complexity of the moment, because in plural marriage culture, ceremonial gestures often carry spiritual undertones, yet divorce alters those frameworks, shifting not only legal bonds but symbolic ones as well. And within that shift lies the quiet tension that fuels speculation. Reports indicate that discussions may have taken place regarding spiritual hierarchy and whether traditional expectations still apply after separation. But many observers counter that autonomy after divorce inherently includes the freedom to redefine ceremonial roles, and that perspective emphasizes growth rather than rebellion, framing the wedding as a declaration of self-respect rather than confrontation. Meanwhile, sources close to the extended family hint that Robyn has encouraged calm and reflection, emphasizing the emotional impact on younger children and advocating unity, which highlights the layered nature of these relationships. Because even after marital bonds dissolve, shared history remains, and navigating that history publicly adds another layer of pressure. Yet those aligned with Janelle appear focused on celebration rather than dispute, reinforcing the idea that silence can function as boundary rather than avoidance. And as speculation continues to swirl, attention turns to the reception, where reports describe a carefully curated atmosphere centered on renewal, gratitude, and collective strength rather than nostalgia. And one particularly discussed rumor involves a mother-son dance between Janelle and Logan, a moment that, if captured on camera, could serve as emotional culmination, not as a statement against anyone, but as acknowledgement of shared resilience. Viewers remember seasons marked by financial strain, relocations, and emotional negotiations, and to see those years distilled into a single dance would inevitably invite reflection on the journey traveled. And that reflection carries narrative power, because audiences who invested time in this family often seek closure, or at least evidence of growth. And within that growth lies another compelling layer: financial independence. Chatter suggests that Janelle managed wedding logistics without relying on former shared resources, demonstrating autonomy and collaboration with her adult children. And that detail resonates because money in past seasons frequently symbolized leverage, responsibility, and imbalance. So to witness an event funded and supported independently reinforces themes of self-sufficiency and partnership rather than dependence. And then there's the new husband, whose presence continues to spark curiosity. Described consistently as composed, respectful, and particularly mindful in his interactions with Janelle's sons, insiders claim he sought their blessing not as obligation, but as courtesy, a gesture that contrasts sharply with earlier seasons marked by... And just like that, one walk down the aisle may have closed a chapter and opened a brand new legacy, proving sometimes the quietest moves speak the loudest. If this deep dive moved you, hit subscribe and become part of our Coco Gossip family, because we're here for the full story, heart, truth, and all.